Have you ever found yourself standing at the edge of someone else's happiness, holding a truth that could change everything yet not knowing whether speaking it would heal or destroy?
奥さんもうすぐですね。
ああ、そうですね。明日入院になります。
旦那さんは付きっきりですか？
さすがに私は仕事があるんで泊まり込みはできないんですけど、出産には必ず立ち会いたいと思ってます。
念願の奥さんですもんね。
そうですね。さすがに私この年なんで子供を諦めてたんですけど、妻が頑張ってくれたんで本当に彼女には感謝です。
本当に感謝してるの？
してるよ。
そうかしら。そんなこと一言も言わなかったくせに、彼女の前だからってカッコつけてるんでしょ。
そんなことないよ。君のおかげだ。
そうかしら。いつも面倒くさそうに見えてたけど。
面倒くさいなんて思ったことないよ。仕事で疲れて不快な態度をとってしまったかもしれないけど。
Ayaka and Sumi have been friends for so long that their bond feels almost instinctive. They've grown up, built separate lives, married, and settled into routines that look ordinary from the outside. Yet between them, there remains an unspoken understanding, a sense that no matter how much life changes, they are still each other's safe place. They don't speak every day, but when they do, it feels as though no time has passed at all. On the morning, Sumi prepares to go to the hospital to give birth. The world feels suspended in a fragile kind of hope. Ayaka is there, offering gentle encouragement, holding Sumi's hand with the quiet confidence of someone who has always been present in the most important moments. There is anticipation in the air, mixed with exhaustion and tenderness. This is supposed to be a day about beginnings.
じゃあ帰ってくるの楽しみにしてる。
行ってくるね。
いってらっしゃい。
じゃあ、ありがとうございました。
いってらっしゃい。頑張って。
But life rarely unfolds in clean lines.
お塩がないのよ。ちょっと買ってくる。While Sumi is away, Ayaka notices something she was never meant to see in action that suggests Sumi's husband has become emotionally lost, reaching outside the space he once vowed to protect.
すいません。どうしました？
There is no confrontation, no dramatic revelation. Just a moment that lodges itself deep in Ayaka's awareness, unsettling everything she thought she understood. In that instant, Ayaka's role shifts. She is no longer just a supportive friend, standing on the sidelines of someone else's life. She becomes a witness. And with that comes a weight that feels disproportionate to the quietness of the moment. Her thoughts spiral, not in anger, but in confusion. She wonders what it means to know something that could fracture a family at its most vulnerable point. She wonders whether silence can be a form of care, or if it is simply another way of avoiding pain. What makes this moment so powerful is not the action itself, but Ayaka's inner response. She doesn't rush to judgment. She doesn't feel superior. Instead, she feels human, torn between honesty and compassion, between truth and timing. And as the day unfolds, the question lingers in the background, unresolved and heavy, quietly shaping everything that follows. The following morning arrives without relief. If anything, the silence has grown louder. Ayaka wakes with the familiar heaviness that comes from carrying something unfinished, something that doesn't yet have a shape or a place to rest. Her mind keeps returning to the same question, not what she saw, but what it now asks of her. Knowing changes a person. It quietly redraws the boundaries of responsibility.
Oh, 奥さん入院されたんですって？
ええ、もうすぐ出産なんです。
ああ、そうですか。立ち会われるんですか？
ええ、ドキドキしてます。
いいですね。
ミサさんかわいそう。どうすればいいの？はーい。
おはようございます。
おはようございます。
ちょっとお話ししてもよろしいですか？
When Sumi's husband asks to meet her, Ayaka senses what the conversation will be about before a single word is spoken.
わかりました。
He doesn't approach her with arrogance or denial. Instead, there is a visible strain in him, the look of someone who has crossed a line and is only now fully realizing what that crossing could cost.
「昨日はすいません。女性の声がしたので、ミサさん入院しているのになんでだろうって思って。
He asks her to keep the matter private, not as a demand, but as a please. From a psychological perspective, this moment is crucial. People who lose their emotional footing often do so not because they lack values, but because they temporarily lose awareness of what those values protect. In his words, Ayaka hears fear, not fear of being exposed, but fear of losing the life he took for granted, the stability, the sense of belonging. The family he is about to expand, yet may already be damaging. Ayaka doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't shame him. Instead, she speaks in a way that reflects her own internal struggle. She talks about responsibility, not as punishment, but as repair. She invites him to look directly at the gap between who he wants to be and the choice he made when he felt disconnected. In therapy, this is often where real change begins, not at the point of accusation, but at the moment of self-recognition. He listens, and more importantly, he admits fault. Not with dramatic apologies, but with an honest acknowledgement that something inside him drifted, and that he allowed that drift to guide his actions. He promises to realign himself, to return to the life he nearly fractured. Promises, of course, are easy to make in moments of fear. Ayaka knows this. Trusting them is another matter entirely. In the days that follow, Ayaka chooses a path that is neither simple nor emotionally clean. She continues to check in on Sumi, offering warmth and reassurance, celebrating the arrival of new life while quietly holding her own uncertainty. This is what psychologists refer to as emotional containment, the act of holding complexity without releasing it prematurely. It requires empathy, restraint, and an acceptance that clarity does not always come immediately. Ayaka is not convinced everything will resolve, but she chooses, for now, to believe in the possibility of growth, not because it is guaranteed, but because human beings are not static. We are capable of returning to ourselves, especially when someone believes we can. Still, the tension remains unspoken, unresolved, waiting to reveal whether silence will protect or simply delay the truth. When Sumi finally returns home with her newborn, something subtle has shifted. It isn't announced, and no one names it out loud. But Ayaka feels it the moment she steps inside the house. The air is calmer, slower, as if the family is moving with greater care than before. Not perfection, just attention. The kind that often appears after a quiet reckoning. Sumi looks tired in the way only new mothers do, but there is also a softness in her presence. Her husband moves around her differently now. He listens more than he speaks. His gestures are smaller, more deliberate, as if he is relearning the weight of each choice. Ayaka watches quietly, feeling neither victory nor relief, only cautious hope. Change reveals itself through patterns, not moments. What unfolds isn't confrontation, but recognition. By creating space without judgment, she interrupts an unconscious cycle, allowing awareness to guide a different choice. As Ayaka prepares to leave, Sumi's husband thanks her, not with relief, but with humility. Ayaka doesn't respond with reassurance or praise. She understands that healing rarely begins with exposure, but with presence. By choosing restraint, she creates space for awareness, responsibility, and change to emerge naturally. The story reminds us that relationships grow through discernment, not absolutes, through knowing when to speak and when to wait. Real transformation happens when people are seen without condemnation and invited to choose better, with emotional responsibility guiding the way.